Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to DABCC Radio. We have a great show for you today. We have a company called AppEnsure on. And AppEnsure is an interesting company. They were one of the Citrix Startup Companies. So Citrix is actually one of their main investors, which is always a nice thing for us Citrix people that are listening to this podcast to think, Citrix invested money. They like them. It's a good solution. Let's check this out. So that's what I wanted to do, share with you this great solution. So we brought on their CTO and founder. This guy is brilliant technical mind. And so we have a technical podcast, but also a very much a, who, what, why you pay attention, how it works type of podcast for you today. So a typical DABCC radio podcast. I hope you enjoy it. And with no further ado, here's my interview with Sri from AppEnsure. Okay, Sri, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm looking forward to this. We're actually recording on a Saturday. This is, I believe, my first Saturday recording ever. What do you think of that?
Well, I made you work on Saturday. I feel proud of it. Startup culture, man.
I recorded like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I recorded, during the day, but I don't think I've ever done a Saturday recording. So we're breaking new ground on DABCC Radio. So on that note,
Great.
Thank you so much for taking the time on a Saturday to be with us, and let's dive into this. So as always, my first question is, who are you and what do you do over at, your company, AppEnsure? So who are you and what do you do?
Sure. I am Sri Chaganty. I'm the CTO and the founder of AppEnsure. And I basically started AppEnsure about in 2012, 4 years ago, after almost being in a consulting role and running my own consulting company for about 15 years. So that's basically who I am. And based on the experiences of that consulting business, which I'll go into later on when the opportunity comes up, AppEnsure was a result of that experience.
Interesting. It was a byproduct. And there's this great book called Rework that I just absolutely loved. And if you guys haven't read Rework, the listeners out there, and Sri yourself, it's a great book. It just truly is. And they talk about the idea of a byproduct, that everybody has a byproduct, right? We do our daily jobs or our daily lives or whatever. And there's all these things that we have that we could, sell, so to speak. Maybe that's for money. Maybe it's for, whatever, anything. Sell, I use that word loosely. And it's a really interesting idea. So, for example, let's take the lumber company or the lumber business, right, where they cut down trees and they sell you wood. Mm-hmm. And when they first did that in the early days, you end up with all this sawdust, and they're like, "Gosh, what do we do with all the sawdust?" It was garbage to them. And then they realized, wow, we could sell the sawdust, and actually they made more money selling sawdust than they did selling the wood. And it was just a byproduct of what they were doing. It's really interesting. And if I think about my past, my old Methodology in a Box book from way back when, that was a byproduct of my consulting days. It was just the documentation of how I did my job. And
absolutely,
it's really interesting. And everyone out there listening, you have byproducts, right? A lot of people, their byproduct is their blog, right? It's the knowledge they're sharing that. So interesting. What kind of consulting were you doing?
Well, I basically had a stack, the network stack that had layer 2 to layer 7. Any kind of packet processing code, 80% of code that is required to build a router, a switch, a firewall, anything to do with packet processing. We had 80% of the code, and the consulting work was basically, companies like NEC, HP, LSI, they used to come to us and basically license that stack and give us work into completing the rest of the product, whether it is a switch or a router or whatever it is. So we had about 6 million ports running our software today in the world out there, and that was the wood. And the sawdust happened in 2006 when people started calling us and saying, networks are slow, and they're blaming the network, and you gave us the software. Why don't you come and look at what's happening? So we went there and we basically instrumented the networks, and then we said, see, nothing is happening in the network. Everything is hunky-dory. Then they said, well, then show us what is the problem. So I had to go out, get the expertise in virtualization, get expertise in server storage, and all other areas that we didn't have expertise in. And going was good. There were, $1 million deals where basically we were sitting for 30 days in big conference rooms and getting all the logs from all over the place, server logs, storage logs, everything that we could get our hands on, syslogs, and then wire data and putting it all together and basically, kind of tracing the route as what was happening and to say, look at this is what was happening. This is nothing to do with the network. This has something to do with the storage. This has something to do with your virtualization layer. So we've done that. I've done that a couple of times, leading that kind of projects 2-3 times, and saw in a sawdust that basically said, wow, this is a product that people will need because the virtualization at all levels is taking out the visibility that people had before. So the visibility is gone, and therefore everybody is dependent on the tools that they have in every silo that they have. And unless somebody comes and correlates that and kind of gives an authentic way of interpreting that data, then this problems with applications being slow or the infrastructure not working is going to become a big issue. And that was the genesis of the idea of AppEnsure. That was the sawdust that turned out to be AppEnsure in 2012 and into a product now that we are going out.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I was going to ask you, why you founded the company, and well, you just answered that question. You're ahead of me, man. I love this. So you're wide awake on Saturday, and that's really interesting, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is the sawdust, right? And you have all this expertise, and you productized it, and you made it, and you gave it to all of us, which is really, really cool. But the APN space, the performance monitoring space, is a crowded space, right? In fact, we actually have the phrase "yet another performance monitoring tool." So when you got into this space, did you think about that, and what made you say, okay, we have something special, we're going to do this even though it is a crowded space?
Absolutely. I mean, that was, this consulting thing of perfecting the performance of applications was gone for about 6 years, when actually one of the things we found, it is crowded market. Everybody says the same thing. All vendors say the same thing. Customers are completely confused. But one fundamentally, the difficulty that we had with almost in the environments that we had to go in and use to track this information was, the difficulty of actually instrumenting these solutions and trying to learn from them. There was a big learning curve. Second thing was, every monitoring tool out there basically is getting commodity data from sources that are available. So let's take, for example, Citrix or Windows, WMI, shell scripts, or whatever Citrix is offering to me, or the metrics that the monitoring solutions are collecting, and they're interpreting it with their own interpretation engines and their own knowledge base, and they're projecting the results of that commodity data interpretation as if that is reflecting the performance of an application. So one theory with which we wanted to differentiate ourselves is that's commodity data as told by whichever tool that we are using. There has to be an independent metric that every tool should have that is going to authenticate what everybody else is saying. So if the other tools are giving this information to me, what is that a monitoring tool is measuring that is going to be different, that can actually be your source of truth to authenticate the rest of the information that you're getting. So when we went in there, this is where my networking background came into picture, is we said, you know what, we can actually trace every application, every transaction, every call to an application. If we can start looking at every call to every application from every user, then I can actually find out the responsiveness of that application. So that responsiveness, that response time and throughput are going to be something that I can, and I will only measure that and will take that as my data as my baseline to actually authenticate the rest of the data that I'm getting from the commodity sources, and then interpret it so that I can actually provide a better understanding as to why an application or responsiveness of an application is low. How is the end user experiencing it? And what is that the end user is experiencing, irrespective of what all your commodity data in terms of GPU utilizations or memory utilizations or whatever it is that you're looking at are telling, is the end user satisfied with the application's performance? And the one and only source for that is the responsiveness of an application. So when we went into this field, into APM, and we saw this crowded thing, one big hole I saw was that there isn't an authentic, irrespective of the fact everybody is saying everything the same, there isn't anybody out there who actually can claim that they're collecting the response times and throughputs of every application for usage for every user in the enterprise. And that's one of the biggest holes I've seen to go into this market. And the second one is that you have very, 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 very successful companies like AppDynamics or New Relics of the world who are giving tools for developers who are developing applications in-house. You actually can code instrument those applications, and you actually can see what function calls are being called. And you can perfect the code. You can perfect the in-house built applications to the maximum extent. And those are necessary tools. But when you look at 95% of other software packages that are used in enterprises, whether it be CRM packages, SAP, Microsoft, productivity tools, mission critical tools, they're all provided by the vendors. You don't have access to the code. You cannot go in and do code instrumentation. So you need to have a solution that can also address the 95% of existing mission critical applications that are supported, the 200,000 Windows packaged applications that are out there. You need to be able to monitor them, and there aren't any tools that can do that today. So these two big holes actually drove me to go in and focus on the APM market, because I saw a huge opportunity there to address the unaddressed market.
Well, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So can you expand upon that and maybe give us some of the technology fundamentals that drove the vision of this product?
Absolutely. So as I was just mentioning earlier on, first thing was that, commodity data gives you commodity results. Therefore, you got to have a unique metric, that is the response time and throughput of every application to every user. And the other thing is, if you look at most of the monitoring tools out there, we are dependent upon the resource utilizations. And we basically look at whether it is CPU or memory or any other resource that's available for us as a metric to alarm us or provide alerts. In my opinion, if the service levels that you're providing to the end users are always consistent, then your CPU running at 90% is noise. You shouldn't be getting alarms for that, because you've architected it very well that you're meeting your service level agreements. You're providing the response times that you signed up for. So the other fundamental is the realization that application performance is not reflected in how the resource utilization metrics are projecting that they're being used. So earlier I said you can perfect the code with some of the tools out there, but code perfection always doesn't necessarily mean that you have operational perfection. You could have wonderfully performing code, but every time it is interacting with the infrastructure and is dependent upon the infrastructure services, like say Active Directory or something else like that, and there, if it breaks down for whatever reasons outside that code, then you could have a perfectly coded application, but operationally imperfect application. And another fundamental is that the visibility that most of the vendors out there basically look at it is visibility means throwing tons of data at you and then asking you to interpret it. So that's one of the reasons why even today there's so many performance issue problems. Application performance issue is an evergreen thing because you need a rocket scientist to basically sit down and interpret the data and say, aha, this is what is happening. So wanted to build a solution there where visibility is not tons of data. Visibility is the intelligence that is derived from correlating the data that is available to you so that the decision-making process in terms of determining what is wrong with an application and quickly returning it to the operational state is going to be minimal. So these are the fundamentals on which we built AppEnsure product.
That's interesting. So, it's always about the intelligence, right? It's not just about the raw data. We've been spitting out metrics for decades. It's about what we do with those metrics, right? So how do you use those? Right. How do you use that intelligence, those metrics? This is an audio podcast, so it's tough we can't show it, but can you verbally explain, how you took that intelligence, that data, those metrics, and made it simple to understand?
Absolutely. So let's take the one of the things when you actually have all these metrics is one thing, we actually can build a contextual intelligence on, based on response times. When I'm talking about response times, so take that as a major thing because that's the pivot of our solution. You actually can build a contextual intelligence as to how an application is responding to the users of the application based on the hour of the day, day of the week of the month of the year, and actually build that baseline and establish what is normal. Today, if you go ask any of the IT operations guys and say, what is normal behavior in your IT operations? They'll say, normal is when nobody calls me and yells at me that something is not working. They have no, authentic metrics to basically say, here is my normal behavior of an application. This is the SLAs I provide. These are the number of calls I get. At 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody comes and opens up their mail. At 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock when they leave. Here is at the end of the quarter when they actually use this payroll. End of the quarter when this particular order fulfilling application in SAP is overused. So this is basically the contextual intelligence of how you collect the data, not just to the byproduct, as you said, the sawdust of collecting this data is being able to resolve an issue if you have application performance issue, being able to resolve it and bring the whole environment to the operational state as soon as possible. That's actually, for me, the sawdust. The wood, that's basically the wood you're selling in your example.
Sure.
So sawdust is, look at the intelligence you're collecting. Who is using what application, when, and how? How is that application responding back to that particular user or a set of users? Where are they coming from? Is the behavior different for geographically distributed teams? Is a particular user well known for doing certain things at a certain interval? And if so, how is it affecting other people? So this is how we actually use the data that we are collecting, data mine it, and provide the insights into the application operational intelligence so that you actually can derive from that what is the productivity as a result of loss of availability of an application. When I say availability, it is not just pinging. It's not being there. Availability is not responsiveness. When you're meeting your SLAs and if you're not meeting your SLAs, how is your bottom line being affected? And all of that data is mined by what we collect today. And so that you actually can see the business impact of how application sluggishness, whether they're delivered through Citrix or whether they're delivered directly to the end users, is having an effect for an enterprise.
Very cool. So do I actually see here's my most popular apps and at what time, and maybe something like, here's Sally out there, the receptionist that's running mail merge at noon before she goes off to lunch, shuts her computer down?
Absolutely. And not only that, because of what Mary is doing at noon, everybody else who's trying to get in is actually not getting the bandwidth. The response time is deviating because Mary is dominating the application and everybody else is getting sluggish. That is the intelligence I'm talking about, correlated intelligence I'm talking about.
Very interesting. So does it actually say the user's name then?
Oh, yep. It'll say the user's name, it'll say the IP address, it'll say, what are they doing, and it'll say if the errors that the server side has basically gave up and said, Mary, you're using too much of memory, I'm not going to be processing your request anymore. All of that is caught. Because remember, what we are doing is we are sitting in the kernel and we are looking at every transaction, and we are looking at the response time for every transaction, and then we are also looking at everything else that's happening in that server and correlating all of that information, so that we are being your eyes and ears at every atomic level of your application service delivery chain.
And can we take action against that? So Mary's running this mail merge. She's destroying my Citrix server, and I want something to be done about it. Does it do something? What's next?
Absolutely. Well, that's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
Given the technologist I am, I would like to give a fix-it button, so that when something like that happens, it automatically takes care of the situation. But when you actually go dug into many of these enterprises, there are kingdoms and there are sub-kingdoms that are ruled by the kings that own those silos. Sure. And you cannot, because of the policies, because of the security policies, because of whatever. And it is not like they're bad people. It is basically they have their business practices and they have their set of rules that they have to follow. And if somebody comes by and basically changes those rules and starts changing the configurations, if something else goes wrong, they're the ones who are going to be made accountable for. So the fix-it button, as much as it is appealing, is not as popular with any of these IT operations guys. So yes, we can provide a fix-it button, but only when requested in terms of scripts, and that is after they get enough confidence that we are doing the right things over and over again. They basically turn around and say, Sri, can you just give us a bunch of scripts so that we don't have to do it every time?
Makes sense. That's very cool. When you say a bunch of scripts, can you expand upon that? Do the scripts, are they outside of AppEnsure, or do they plug into the framework and do something, or how does that work?
They're outside with an access. They're outside with an access from within the AppEnsure. The reason why they're outside is because they have to be certified, they have to be authenticated, and they have to be modified. They should be in a position to be modified by the end user, because they would not like us as vendors to know everything that happens within their organization. So we give them the skeletal framework as how we'll do it. They'll customize it if there needs to be customization because of some security policies, but they're accessible from within AppEnsure's master console, so that they can fire them off from there.
Can we automatically fire them if they so choose?
Yes.
If they're brave, if they're brave enough, right?
Yes. Well, after they're certified, when everybody puts their stamp of approval from compliance to security to everybody else in the organization, then it's kind of sanitized version. Then you're allowed to do it. But before it is sanitized within the organization, people will be hesitant to do that.
You got it. No, it totally makes sense. So I want to let's talk a bit about the architecture, about what the product is, in the sense of like physically, right? Or logically, I guess. There's no physical in our world anymore. Well, there is still physical, but it's a lot of logical. So is it this a virtual appliance? Is it software I download? What does it take me to, what is the product? What does it take me from the time I say, hey, I want to try this out, to get it up and running and then see actionable results? What's that process?
So
can you explain that process?
Yeah. Okay. You basically asked 4 questions. I'll start with the first question of architecture.
Yep. The
solution basically consists of 2 parts. One is an agent. We are an agent-based solution. Agents reside in the servers, whether they are Citrix and app servers or Citrix Form or backend infrastructure, like if you're publishing Outlook through XenApp, or if you're publishing a desktop, shared desktop, or dedicated desktop that has an Outlook embedded inside that VDI that is actually calling the backend infrastructure. All of that is basically the service delivery platform, where you need to install the agents, You can also install the agents in the backend infrastructure so that if somebody were to call you and tell you that, hey, my Outlook is not working or my Citrix is frozen, you basically can pinpoint if it is the problem with the Citrix or whether it is the backend infrastructure or it is the SaaS that is being called from within that VDI, a SaaS application that is going outside your organization. So these agents are required to be installed in the servers, in the VDI image, master image. It has to be baked into it if you have VDI environment. You can also optionally put agents in the end devices from where these applications or VDIs are being accessed, where the Citrix receiver is running. When you do that, you basically get a bifocal view. When a request comes from Doug, how long did it take for me to service that request is one response time and throughput metric that we measure at the server, at the delivery side, at the server side. And when I have an agent inside your endpoint, then every time I'm calling an application that has been self-discovered, I'm going to say, how long did it take for me once I sent a request for this application for me to get it? So you basically can look at these two views of response times, one from a service delivery point of view, one from a receiver point of view, and compare it and say, is it the delivery infrastructure? Is it the backend infrastructure? Is it the network itself? Or is it the endpoint where Doug is watching 3-4 different YouTube videos and complaining that his Outlook is not working when he's accessing it through his Citrix? Which you don't do, I know, Doug, but basically, that's basically the agent. So it is the architecture involves agents that need to be installed. These agents, you just need one per operating system. They're self-policing agents. They constantly look at how much resources they're using. They typically use anywhere from 1% to 2%, and they do not, use anything more than 5%. When it crosses 5%, they basically self-police themselves and throttle back by reducing the frequency of sending data. They run as high availability services. When you install our agents, there is no need to restart the servers. There is no configuration required. Every agent, after it comes up, auto-discovery of application, auto-discovery of topology, everything is automatic. All these agents communicate with the master appliance, and the master appliance communication for security reasons is only one way, and there is no security hole you can actually drill from the master into any of your servers. And in a typical 24-hour day, an agent sends no more than 10 meg of data, 24 hours. Okay. So if you're familiar with NetScalers of the world, we are not shipping the entire network data that we are collecting on putting a lot more data and bandwidth requirements on your network. In 24 hours, the maximum an agent will send is about 10 meg of data. Sorry, Doug, you were going to ask me a question.
No. You're. Please continue. 10 megs is not a lot of. That's 10 web pages. Actually, it's about 5 web pages. So it's a very small amount of data. Yes,
that's very important because, some of the customers that we went in there, they basically say, you know what, we turned on the NetScaler and it crashed our applications because there was so much of data coming on. Because, that's one of the things that we noticed from our my consulting practice is you cannot tax. The system that is monitoring cannot be the reason for the monitored to be brought down.
Sure.
So that's basically do no harm. You have to monitor in such a way that you're not doing harm. So if you're basically, the fundamental of measurement, right? If whatever you're trying to do to measure is itself influencing what is being measured, then there is no effect on that. So that was very, very, very conscious design principle that we had as we were building this. And everything that we're doing is real traffic from end users to a Citrix Zen app or Zen desktop and back into the infrastructure where the applications of VDIs are running. There are no synthetic transactions. We're not doing pings to find out the availability. We're not doing synthetic transactions because synthetic transactions will never, ever tell you what is happening in the real world.
Totally understand. Totally agree. So earlier you mentioned something returning the system to an operational state. So I want to ask about that. So what do you mean by returning to an operational state and reducing? What do you mean by all that?
Okay, so what I meant by that is, when you go into a large organization, and it in multiple that is supporting hundreds and thousands or thousands, even hundreds of users. Today, in an enterprise, there are so many subject matter expertise in expertise islands, whether it is networking, whether it is system administrators looking at the servers, whether it is the Citrix admins, VMware admins, so virtualization, software-defined networking. All these silos of expertise are together working hard to provide the infrastructure and the ability for delivering the applications to end users so that they could be productive. When something goes wrong, the amount of time it takes for somebody to be able to drill down, the mean time it takes to identifying a problem is 90% of the time in any enterprise you go today. 90% of the time is taken because they're working on where to find the problem, where the problem really occurred. So in the process, when, very typical, most of your customers and most of your followers, Doug, when they're listening to this podcast can relate to the fact that they get calls from their Citrix users just complaining it is slow. That is the only metric that they have. It is slow. What do you mean by slow? Well, it was not as fast as it was yesterday. Is the additional intelligence you get from the person, the 20% population that care to call and tell you that there is an issue. 80% of the population that doesn't even care. They get up and walk away saying, what time is it? 9 o'clock. Oh yeah, 9 o'clock every day. This application behaves like this. I'll go get some coffee. So that 20% of the population that is actually calling and telling you that you have an issue are not giving you enough information for you to actually find out what is happening. So you generate a trouble ticket, and that trouble ticket basically goes from L1 to L2 to and lives in L2 level, level 2, because who's supposed to take this? Is it the system admin? He'll basically look at all his metrics and say, nothing is wrong. I'm running. I have 12 cores. Nothing is going wrong. And throws it to network guys. Network guys looks at it. I don't have any bandwidth storms or anything, any broadcast storms. The bandwidth is all good. Goes into the Citrix guys. They'll look at all their Citrix metrics and inside the reach side and basically say nothing wrong here. Goes to VMware. And this kind of continuously goes from one silo to another silo to another silo. And that is where the mean time it takes to identifying a problem and bringing it back to operational state is spent. What we have done is, since we are correlating and collecting data across these multiple silos, we can pinpointedly say, hey, this particular user using this particular application called Microsoft or Outlook, using the backend Exchange server that is hosted on this particular, we have 3 Exchange servers, and this particular Exchange server hosted on this particular server is basically running out of memory because Mary decided to send a huge email merger and broadcast.
Yeah.
And that is what I meant by bringing down, coming back, making it come back to the operational state in the shortest amount of time.
Makes total sense. So let's focus on use cases. And let's jump to the Citrix thing. There are a lot of Citrix guys out there. I'm a Citrix guy. So can you walk me through how you can make a Citrix customer's life easy? Here's your chance to explain to all the Citrix guys why AppEnsure is for Citrix. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So let's take a example. You're publishing, you're doing a shared desktop. You've kind of migrated to 7.6, gone through a lot of hurdles, technically, management-wise, got the money, did everything last year. Now you're, great in 7.6 environment, and you're publishing shared desktops, and people are getting in, and things look great until people start complaining that, well, what did you do? It's still slow. Or it's not working. Now, in that kind of a situation, when you are taking one master image and you are basically sharing it with multiple users out there, hundreds and hundreds of users, and they're all using it, and some of them coming back and saying, it's slow. How would you actually be able to drill down to understand which one of those 1,000 VDIs or a set of VDIs is actually causing the problem, if at all it is causing the problem? Or is it your infrastructure that is causing the problem, the Citrix infrastructure? Or it is the infrastructure that is behind that Citrix form that is actually providing access? You're publishing Chrome, and then Chrome is going back into the backend business critical applications, and those business critical applications are the ones that the users are accessing and complaining that they're slow. It is the Citrix through which you're going back into your Epic or into your Cerner, any of your medical application packages that are basically providing the service. How soon can you find an issue in terms of finding out that, okay, this particular VDI is having an issue because of the network? How can you find it even before you get a call from a user? That's what AppEnsure is providing. When I'm measuring the response times from within every VDI. Now, I'm not dependent upon right now on the Citrix telling me what the latency is. Citrix is telling me a latency of how the Citrix sees its latency between its Xenap server storefront to the end user. But when the image is basically calculating the response time, I'm telling you how long it is taking for me to paint those pixels on your screen, on your VDI, at that particular end device. And not only am I, so when I'm painting these pixels, if I don't have any data to paint, then to the end user, to change when I paint that new screen, to the end user, it looks as if the application is frozen. So if there is an issue with the backend, being able to say, hey, this has nothing to do with the Citrix silo. It has to do with the backend, because the response time when I call this particular application from this VDI into the backend, it is taking much longer time than it was taking yesterday. And that is the reason why this is getting slower. And the reason why it is taking longer is because whatever diagnostics can be done on the backend, coming up and telling you what is happening predictively, beforehand, even before the deterioration of the end user's experience happens. That is how Citrix users can benefit by using AppEnsure in their environments. Predictive, preventive, proactive.
Very cool.
The power of P, 3 Ps, is what AppEnsure brings.
P cubed.
P cubed AppEnsure.
P cubed. AppEnsure, P cubed. Can you talk about this? We're pretty much done. We're going to move into my last couple questions, which are competition future. Can you talk about what and you have throughout this podcast? So maybe reiterate or just add some more value. But what differentiates you from the other solutions out there? Why should we care? And at the same time, I'll throw in what is the cost? How do you market? How do you license this product? Things like that.
Okay, I'll start with the cost, and I'll also answer the last question you asked, which I didn't. In terms of if you're interested in the product, all it takes for you is to come to our website and register and download a free evaluation. We provide 14 days free evaluation, and we can also extend it and also provide the services for you to be doing a paid evaluation. And many of the large customers have done that, where they've actually taken our services and have run a shorter period of 2 to 3 months of evaluating our product in their environments and seeing the value. So it is a simple download from our website, www.appensure.com. So that was the last question of your previous question, last part of your previous question. Now coming to pricing, I'll start there. A simple example. If you have 100 named users in your Citrix, our solution will cost you less than about $3,000 per year. As simple as that. So you're looking at being able to provide an end user centric APM solution, guarantee SLAs for less than $30 per year per customer, per user of your customers. That's how it is priced. So in terms of the competitive advantage of what we are doing is, as I mentioned earlier on, the end user experience is why an application performance management solution should exist, must exist. The existing solutions are basically helping you to tell that it is not their problem. An application performance management solution life is not limited to finger pointing to another silo, saying that it is not my problem, maybe it is his problem. The solution should allow the CIOs to make sure that a consistent service level in terms of response time to the end users is guaranteed so that they can predictively project what the productivity of their team is going to be. And that is the biggest difference that we offer. Basically providing end user experience, a true visibility of end user experience based on the real transactions and ability to enhance it by fine-tuning your infrastructure so that it is no more blame storming or war meetings, but more can be concentrated on how you can enhance the productivity of the enterprise. That is the biggest differentiator of AppEnsure.
Very cool. Very cool. You said something interesting there, 2 to 3 months. It doesn't take 2 to 3 months to resolve issues, or to see value, does it? I mean, what did you mean by 2 to 3 months?
It doesn't actually. True value is you can actually get it in 3 to 4 days after you install it. The contextual intelligence basically develops in 3 days. You basically have hour of the day of the week of the month. All of that can be done. But my experience has been that it takes about 2 to 3 months for different silos and different kind of approvals and everything, and then being able to test it in pre-production, production, particular set of applications, expanding it to multiple applications. So that 2 to 3 months is basically like not to establish the value proposition of the tool, but to establish the applicability of the value proposition to the multiple environments that they have. And when mature organizations realize that it is not just saying, oh, it works in our pre-production environment or it works in our lab, it is let us see if it consistently provides value in the environments that we are having issues. For that, they actually develop the projects and say, we would like to test it for 3 to 4 months or 2 to 3 months, and we would like your hand holding and explaining it and explaining what is happening, installing it, and then basically use that time, quote unquote, as a training session as well. So once they roll it out into production, you already have the built-in expertise, you already have the belief and the confidence of the people that are going to be using that our tool, and the fact that it's already been approved and certified in multiple environments, working without breaking anything. So this process takes about 2 to 3 months, and that's why they create those projects.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Sri, I think that's what I have for you today. I'll go ahead and give you the last word. And of course, you mentioned where to learn more, but I'll throw that at you too, is if somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do? And so on that, I don't ask one question at a time, do I? Everything's like 3 or 4 questions.
I'm taking notes, so I'm trying to answer all your questions.
yeah. Now imagine what my brain is like. It's a very scattered place up there. It's like, so I constantly have
if there is a type A plus personality, I think that's you, Doug.
I have a notes app, and I always have it open because these things come to mind, and I'm writing them down because I go from one thing to another, and I have to write them all down so I remember them all along the way, right? Because it's not just one thing; it's like 5 things. They come in storms. My brain is a login storm. That's what I have. Not a very good thing. I need AppEnsure for Doug. Do you have that?
Yes, it's me.
Yeah, I love it. So on that note, back to my question, if you even remember it, is, hey, you have the last word. If somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do?
Please first visit our website, www.appensure.com. You have an option to request for a demo. I will be the one who will give you the demo. Please fill in the form. I promise that. I promise every customer to give a demonstration myself as the CTO of the company, because I am learning by those interactions. And we can give you a demo. We can encourage you to go with a free evaluation, and we can help you understand the differentiation of the product. So please do visit us at www.appensure.com. And Doug, I really want to thank you not only for your time, but the way you make it easy to explain things. I really love it. Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you. And I love the fact that you're doing the demos with them, because that's almost like, think about it, guys. If you're going through this, if you're listening to this podcast, you got to this point, you're listening, and you have questions. Well, bring this guy on, have him demo this thing, have him put it into your environment, in your labs or what have you, and then ask him your questions. Right? This is like free training time with Sri. I love it.
Yep.
So that's now that is value right there. So that's awesome. Definitely head over to appensure.com. That's AppEnsure. I spelled that right? I spelled that correctly, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Ensuring application performance. AppEnsure.
Yeah, I love it. I'm never going to win a spelling bee. I can spell, I can type, I can type it right, but I can't spell it off the top of my head. It's
Look
things.
who you're talking to.
Computers.
You're talking to a person.
Computers have completely destroyed me. I can't write anymore. My hand doesn't have the muscles to write anymore. I start off with perfect writing. It looks really great, and then it just sort of fizzles out altogether. So computers have completely destroyed me over the past 30 some years.
They're coming. They're taking over.
Yeah,
Doug, they're coming. They're taking over.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that is actually true, but that's the conspiracy theory podcast. We won't go there.
All right. Thanks a lot for your time, Doug.
Hey, thank you so much, Sri. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And on that note, I'll just say, that's a podcast. So thank you again. That concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. I want to thank my guest for today, Sri from AppEnsure. So definitely check out what these guys are doing. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sri did, I think, a phenomenal job explaining the value of what they're doing. And it is such a unique APM type of solution. So head on over there, download it, try it out. It's easy. It just works in minutes, and away you go. So again, that's AppEnsure, AppEnsure.com, AppEnsure. And on that note, I will just say thank you. Head on over to DABCC Radio for the or DABCC.com for the latest and greatest virtualization news support. This is DABCC Radio, so if you like these podcasts, definitely head over to DABCC.com and check out the radio section, and you'll find tons of new podcasts and old podcasts, and just podcasts in general. Great interviews with great people. And on that note, we have a new iPhone app coming up, iPhone and Android app, and we have an update for our both for our news app and the podcast app. So check out that stuff. It's going to be online. If it's not already, it'll be online very shortly. So it's out of my hands. I'm waiting for Apple. So we're moving forward. Really, really happy to have all that stuff. So now DABCC.com has been rebuilt from the ground up. Beautiful, fast, easy, powerful. And our mobile apps have been rebuilt from the ground up. Easy, fast, powerful. So what else do I say? I hear the music playing. It's time for me to say thank you for listening to DABCC.
Say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.